I'm going to spend about 20 minutes to talk about gut health and the root causes for bloating. So I just want to put a disclaimer. We're not doctors. This is not medical advice. If you are on medication and you want to make some major lifestyle changes, please speak with your health practitioner. Normally, I talk a lot about food, what foods to eat, what not to eat, and herbs and all that. But today, I'm actually going to talk about the digestive system. So I won't really focus on food itself. And so because of that, I added a free PDF that you can download on my website. My website is www.bchamphealth.com, and I'll add it into the chat box. And then you can download a PDF on the top 10 foods for gut health. Some people ask me, I don't even know if I'm bloating. What do you mean by that? So bloating is really a feeling of like a balloon inside, like there's gas, there's swelling, it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's painful because sometimes the gas is trapped and it's like a distension of the belly. But sometimes bloating is normal. So let's say, for example, if you eat a really big meal, you can get bloated. If you have a lot of raw veggies, because the fiber is so hard to digest, some people get bloated from that, from raw veggies. If you're not chewing well and you're stressed and you're like a fast eater, inhaling your food, you could get bloated because the food's not digested properly. It creates a lot of fermentation and gas. If you have carbonated drinks with the bubblies, like that could cause some bloating. And then, of course, if you have like a lot of fatty meals, that would be an issue. But let's say, for example, you haven't eaten all night, you wake up and the first thing in the morning, you have a glass of water. And that's very typical for some people. They just drink water, nothing to digest really, and then they get the bloat. Or they have bloating all day long, regardless of what they eat. After every meal, it's persistent, and sometimes it's accompanied by diarrhea, constipation, or nausea and some pain. So that's the one that I want to talk about, what's kind of abnormal. So when we look at the digestive system, we have all the organs that are involved in the digestion process. And each organ has its own juices. So we call them gastric juices. And at every point, if any of these points of the process is weakened, you could start to feel bloated because one part of it isn't, like one part of the equation isn't working. So let's say you start from the mouth all the way to the rectum. In the mouth, you have salivary glands that have enzymes. You have amylase in there. So you really, really want to chew very well. Then as the food travels down, you have this peristalsis, the word that Alexandra loves, the peristalsis, the movement, like think about a toothpaste, a tube of toothpaste. You're kind of squeezing the toothpaste and it kind of squeezes the toothpaste out. It's like that wave motion. So sometimes these muscles can get weakened. So you would feel like, a little bit bloated, it's moving slow. As the food gets into the stomach, there's the stomach acid that's really important. And then there's pancreatic enzymes, there's bile that helps with the fat absorption. And then there's small intestine where most of the nutrients get absorbed. And then you have the large intestine where most of the water gets absorbed. And then eventually the food comes out. So the first question, if you want to put in your comment in the chat box, are you a fast eater? Like, do you normally eat really fast or do you take your time and chew really well? Are you stressed when you're eating? Because that makes a big difference. So remember to chew well. And it's like a muscle that hasn't really been exercised sometimes. So imagine if you sprained your ankle, you have to like relearn how to walk and strengthen slowly those muscles. So with people who are fast eaters, they've had their whole life to develop this habit of like not chewing that well. Then they have to really consciously chew 40 times or more, like really get to that pasty texture. Also limit the water during your meals. It's so common now that people are just drinking tons of cold water, especially. So the cold can constrict the bile ducts, the pancreatic ducts, and it can restrict the gastric acid from being released. So you want lukewarm or warm liquids, and you want to just sip on it a little bit during the meal. If you can add some lemon to it or some vinegar, that could boost the stomach acid. That can help with digestion too. And so let me just see, like, who is aware of the stomach acid and what it does? Does anyone here know? Like, maybe you can put that in the chat box. We'll see. For me, the stomach acid is really the first line of defense. It has two main purposes. One is to help break down the food, and two is to kill the pathogens. So I would compare it to bouncers outside of a club. Okay, so you got this stomach acid, it's going to kill the pathogens. But if you have weak stomach acid, then all kinds of elements can get into the house, and then it can cause havoc. So you want to keep the stomach environment sterile. A lot of times, medication can lower stomach acid. Some people who take a lot of PPIs, like the proton pump inhibitors, like Dexilin, and just different, like Nexium, for example, they tend to lower the stomach acid. But even stress can do that. And so the other thing about stomach acid is it signals the downward formula. Remember, I was talking about digestive enzymes. So with the amount of stomach acid that's healthy, you get a healthy production of pepsin, which is an enzyme. It's created in the stomach lining. And then there's also intrinsic factor, which is a protein that helps with vitamin B12 absorption. So without enough stomach acid, you could be, harder to absorb B12 and also iron. Some people who have low iron, anemia, it could just be that their stomach acid is low and they're not able to break those bonds to absorb the iron, and not so much that they're not eating enough red meat or iron-rich food. So we have to look at both sides of the equation. Is it the food or is it your stomach environment? So one simple test that you can do, and a lot of times I tell my clients, is to do a baking soda test, also known as the Burp test. So have you ever heard of this? Anybody heard of this test? So basically, it's using baking soda. You might have it already at home. If you do, just make sure it's not old. Like, sometimes you have this box in the back of your fridge for like God knows how many years. Don't use that one. Use a brand new one because it won't be like expired. So then open that up and take a quarter of a teaspoon first thing in the morning, mix it into half a cup of water, 4 ounces of water to be precise. Mix it well, and then time how long it takes to burp. So it's like that. I don't know if the students do the science experiment where they take the vinegar and baking soda to make a volcano. So it's pretty much with that in mind, where it should react and it should make you burp. So if you burp in less than 2-3 minutes, it means that you have a healthy amount of stomach acid. But if it takes you 3 to 5 minutes to burp, you're kind of on the low side. And then if you take more than 5 minutes, and in many cases people don't even burp at all, then it just means you're really low on stomach acid. Okay, so the other gastric juice that is important to pay attention to are digestive enzymes. The pancreas makes a lot of those enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, but also the small intestines in the villi, they also make some level of enzymes. And then there's bile that break down fat. So the large globules of fat into little droplets, similar to dishwashing liquid when you add it and it kind of breaks out the fat. So you would need healthy amounts of bile, otherwise you could get bloated when you're eating fatty foods, or you could even get diarrhea when you're eating fatty foods because the fat isn't absorbed properly. The other thing are digestive enzymes that I had mentioned that could break down proteins, carbs, and fats. So when you look at the Bristol stool chart, this is very classic. I have seen it many times at the pediatrician office to check if my my kids' poop is looking normal. Basically, you want to have the transit time when you eat a meal to the time that you poop to be between 24 to 30 hours. And you can test it by just having some corn or some beets, and then look in the toilet and see when the corn comes out. So if it's really long, like some people are 72 hours, then there's a problem with peristalsis, there's a problem with your gut environment. So you kind of want the stool to look like this, like a sausage shape, might have some cracks, but it's not pebbly, it's not too lumpy, and it's not also like pasty and, very mushy. So you're looking at that consistency. The other thing to look out for to see if you have enough digestive enzymes and bile is the color of your stool and what's in the stool in the toilet. If you happen to see, and I'm not talking about corn or beets, but if you happen to see greens, carrots, and other food substances that you recognize, then it means that either you're not chewing well or you just don't have enough digestive enzymes. So enzymes can be bought at pharmacies. There are many different kind of enzymes depending on what you're lacking. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of lactose intolerance. So the enzyme would be lactase, or gluten, or beans. People get really bloated with beans. So there's specific enzymes, and that's why it's good to write a food journal. Keep track of what you're eating and then what's causing that reaction. The other thing is sometimes you get this oily ring around the toilet or some shiny stool that's floating. That could be an indication that you have low bile, low lipase, which is the fat enzyme, or just poor fat digestion. The color of it should be a cardboard box color. So if it's lighter color than a cardboard box, it could mean that you have low bile. If it's really pale, like white or gray, clay colored, then it could be that you have an obstruction somewhere in your bile duct, in the gallbladder, the pancreas, and that would be very urgent to look after. And then if it's really yellow, your stool, for a long period of time, it could be that you have too much fat, or it also in the diet, or it also could be other more serious issues. The other thing to look out for is mucus. So if you see mucus in the in the stool, it could just mean that there's inflammation in the intestines. It could be from parasites. It could just be from a lot of constipation. Sometimes people will build up mucus, and they could show up in the stool. Then the last two are really, pretty severe issues. That if you have black tarry stool, there's some bleeding, and it's older blood, so it could be from the stomach or upper intestinal tract. It could also be from the colon if you're very constipated, but definitely seek some medical advice there. And then if you see bright red color in the stool, then it could just be due to hemorrhoids, tears in the rectum, so closer to the end. So Alexandra had pointed out, unless you ate some beets, sometimes you see red in the toilet and it can give you a scare. But if you actually see that while you wipe, and it's red, then definitely that's more closer to the end, to the colon and rectum area. The last thing I want to talk about in the environment inside your gut is the microbiome. So this is the family of microbes. We have them, it's natural. In fact, they found that people that live in tribal areas in the country, they have more diverse microbiome, and therefore their immune system is a little bit better because it can adjust to different environments. There's fungi, virus, different parasites it could be, but as long as you have healthy gut bacteria, then the unfriendly ones are kind of kept in check. So your microbiome actually helps to digest food, certain fibers. It helps to produce some vitamin B's and vitamin K. And surprisingly, it actually makes 80 to 90% of our serotonin. It's actually made in our gut. So if our gut health is not great, you could have some anxiety. So it's normal that, maybe you're not producing enough serotonin. Also, it helps to convert beta carotene into vitamin A. So that's also important, and helps to reduce inflammation. It helps to strengthen the gut barrier. So how do you know if you have some problems with your microbiome? So if you do have it, there are some symptoms. Number one, if you're really bloated and you're taking enzymes, but you're still bloated, then you could get a SIBO test. And the SIBO stands for small intestine bacterial overgrowth. It just means that there's bacteria that went into your small intestines that really shouldn't be there. Sometimes it could be so much pressure that from the colon, there's some bacteria that enters into the small intestines. So it crosses over, and that's not healthy, but it can happen. Or sometimes your stomach acid could be low and certain bacteria gets in and it starts to overgrow, sometimes due to antibiotics, So there's two classes of bacteria. Usually when you have SIBO, there's methane gas producing and there's hydrogen gas producing. And normally if you go see your doctor, they can prescribe a test, and it's a breath test. So you just exhale into a device and it shows if you have methane gas, hydrogen gas, and depending what you have, sometimes they'll give you antibiotics, but sometimes you can treat it with herbs like oregano or cloves or from garlic. It's called allicin. It's an extract from garlic. So that really depends on the type of bacteria. Also, if you have parasites, it could cause bloating too, and it could cause a lot of fatigue. Like you get really tired because the parasites can consume the nutrients and take that away. You could get a stool test for the parasites, and that, would recommend that if you really feel like something's not quite right, even if you are taking enzymes. So Candida is quite common. We have it in our body. It's a type of yeast. And when it overgrows, you will have that yeasty smell. It's like a body odor. People with very sour feet, you probably have smelled that before. Or when you sweat, you can kind of smell a bit of yeasty sourness. The classic thing to check for to see if you have Candida is to look on your tongue and see if you have a white coating or a yellow coating. Remember little babies that have thrush? I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there's this white coating. So it's similar to that. Like there's some excess Candida. For some people, it could cause a lot of fatigue, bloating, mood swings, and definitely a lot of sugar cravings, because the sugar will feed this yeast. So you want, it's going to come for people who have a lot of Candida. They'll feel like uncontrollable sugar cravings. Nail skin fungus infections or frequent yeast infections, that could be a possible symptom. And why I'm showing all this is basically if you check off a lot of these on this list, then it just means that the level of Candida is higher. But if you check on like one of them, maybe it's not really related. So it's just to, that's how it is. We often have multiple symptoms together to sort of bring you to a certain action. So parasites, for example, it's kind of this group of symptoms. So if you have multiple checks, then it could be that you have parasites. One of them could be just anxiety at night. Some people, they drool in their sleep, or they clench their jaw, or they can have nightmares. So you can have multiple of these. Sometimes it's itchy rectum. Actually, that would be a very classic sign. The other one would be just being hungry at weird times. Like you just ate and then 15 minutes later, you're super hungry again. That is also a classic sign of could be parasites. And the only way to really know for sure is if you get a stool test. But for a lot of people, if they have pets, if they have cats, dogs, if they've jumped into a lake, if they've traveled and had buffets, it could be. It's not as uncommon as you think. So another thing to look out for is if those symptoms are worse during a full moon, then it's probably likely, because during the full moon, that's when the eggs hatch. And so you would probably feel more of these symptoms. So when you do a parasite cleanse, it's really important to bring it over the full month. So you cover the full moon as well. So what are some herbs that can help? I'm not going to give you all the herbs because there's so many depending on what you have. So if you need help, you can always do a private consultation. But just to give you an idea, cloves, it's stuff you have in your kitchen. If you chew on a clove, if you're bloated, that can help with reducing having the tea with oregano. So oregano is really great. You can even chew on it to squeeze the oils out to make it stronger. But that's one way for you to start to test, is this really helping my bloat? And if it is, a lot of times it might not resolve at all, but it gives you an indication that you're on the right track. And if you see improvement, then you can go into the capsules. And I usually recommend the capsules because they're a lot more potent. They usually group a lot more essential active ingredients in each capsule. So at least it's something you can do right away at home to see if this helps. And then to build up your gut bacteria, it's important to have fermented foods because they naturally have healthy probiotics, such as yogurt, kefir, kimchi, and sauerkraut. And it's also good to have a variety of fermented foods, not just one, because then you get different strains of bacteria. So try to have a little bit of miso, for example, or a little bit of sauerkraut over time. And before I end this part of the presentation, I just want to say for some people, it's food sensitivities. So if you're saying, like I'm bloated, it could be that you don't have enough of those enzymes, like gluten, lactose, what I said earlier, but it also could be your immune system responding to it. And if it's an immune response, then it's best to avoid those foods for a period of time, like eliminate them, and then gradually add it back in small quantities to build a tolerance. So that's a different thing. If it's an immune response, then even if you take enzymes, it's not really going to help right away. So you have to kind of remove it, let the immune system kind of calm down. It's very hard on the body. So for people who are, let's say they're celiac and they take something with gluten, that can cause a lot of issues on their body. So you really want to remove that. So I just wanted to cover all types of scenarios. And I do offer food sensitivity tests. So if you're not sure if there's intolerances, you can get the test on my website, or you can keep a food journal and just see like what group of foods do you react to. And then you can try the enzymes, or you can try to eliminate them and slowly add them back. I have a lot of information in the ebooks. So if you want to go on my website, you can have access to these ebooks. If you want to do a consult, that's great, we can talk. But if not, you can also get some of these ebooks, and it goes into detail in these antimicrobial herbs and what they do and what it's good for.